I want to tell you about one of the most incredible survival stories you will ever hear. It's the true story of a 17-year-old girl, a horrifying plane crash, and an 11-day fight for her life, totally alone, deep in the Amazon rainforest.
So, it all starts with this one number, 10,000 feet. That's almost 2 miles, straight down. And that is the unbelievable height from which a young woman named Julianne Kopka fell out of a plane that was breaking apart in the sky.
And the craziest part? She lived through it. But this story, it's not just about surviving that insane fall. It's really about everything that happened after she hit the ground. It's a story about resilience, about knowledge, and about an unbelievable will to live. Because here's the thing that'll really get you. She wasn't the only person who survived the crash itself, but she was the only one to walk out of that jungle alive.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. It's Christmas Eve, 1971. Lanza Flight 508 is making its way over the Peruvian Amazon. You know, people are in a good mood, they're excited to see their families for the holiday, but this flight, it's about to turn into an absolute catastrophe. And this is where the story gets a little bit chilling. Julianne and her mother, they were on a last-minute flight. All the good, reliable airlines were totally booked for Christmas, so they had only one choice left, Lanza. Now, this airline had such a terrible reputation that her own father had told them, point blank, never, ever fly with them. And the disaster? It happened with terrifying speed. I mean, the first half hour was totally normal, but then the plane flies straight into this massive, dark storm. The turbulence gets so bad that luggage starts flying out of the overhead bins. And then, at 21,000 feet, there's this blinding flash of lightning. It hits the right wing, the wing catches fire, snaps off, and the entire plane just starts to tear apart in the sky.
So suddenly, Julianne is just falling, still strapped into her row of 3 seats, just tumbling out of the sky. She said the deafening roar of the plane's engines was just gone. All she could hear was the terrifying shriek of the wind rushing past her. And when she looked down, she saw the endless green of the Amazon jungle, which she later said looked just like a field of broccoli. And then, everything went black.
So, the big question is, how on earth did she survive a 10,000-foot fall? Well, it turns out it was this absolutely wild combination of 3 kind of miraculous things. First, powerful updrafts from the storm actually slowed her down. Second, the row of seats she was strapped to started spinning kind of like a helicopter rotor, which created drag and slowed her down even more. And finally, the incredibly thick canopy of the jungle itself acted like a giant, messy cushion to break her fall. She wakes up the next morning, and it's Christmas Day. She's lying on the jungle floor, covered in mud, in a ton of pain, and she is completely, utterly alone. Her real fight for survival? That was just getting started. Okay, so let's just take stock of her situation here. She has a broken collarbone, a sprained knee, and deep gashes on her body. She has a concussion, and one of her eyes is swollen completely shut. To top it all off, she lost her glasses, and she was already very nearsighted, and she only has one sandal. I mean, this is what she's working with. It's just brutal.
But here's the thing. Julianne wasn't your average teenager from the city. She had a huge advantage. Her parents were famous zoologists, and they actually ran a research station deep in the Amazon. So she had literally grown up in the jungle. She knew the basics of survival, she knew what to be afraid of, and crucially, she knew not to panic.
And right then, in all that chaos and pain, a single piece of advice from her dad popped into her head. And that one piece of advice, it became her lifeline. It became her entire strategy.
And this, right here, shows you the power of simple, direct knowledge. Her mission became crystal clear. Find a source of water and follow it downstream. She knew small streams would lead to bigger streams, and those would lead to a river. And in the Amazon, rivers are basically highways. She knew if she followed a river long enough, she would eventually find people. That was it. That was the whole plan.
Now, for supplies, you're not going to believe this. The only food she had was a small bag of candy she managed to find in the wreckage, just 30 little pieces. And she knew she had to make them last because she had no idea if she'd be out there for days or for weeks. That was everything she had.
So began this grueling 11-day journey. It was a slow, painful trek through one of the most hostile environments on the planet, with just those words from her father echoing in her head.
This timeline really gives you a sense of her struggle. On the 4th day, she stumbled upon something truly horrifying, another row of seats with passengers still strapped in. It was a terrible sight, but it also confirmed what she feared. She was alone. Then, a little glimmer of hope on day 6. She heard a specific bird call that she recognized meant a bigger river was nearby. But then, by day 9, a crushing realization. The sound of search planes was gone. The official search was over. She was completely on her own.
And just when you think it couldn't possibly get any worse, her physical condition took a nosedive. Flies had laid eggs in one of the open cuts on her arm. That wound was now infested with more than 30 maggots, literally eating their way into her flesh. She was in serious danger of a massive infection that could easily kill her.
Finally, on the 11th day, when she was weak from hunger and infection and barely hanging on, she saw it. Something that looked impossible. A boat. A real, man-made boat, just tied up on the riverbank.
With the very last bit of her strength, she followed a small path up from the river and found a little empty hut, and inside, a can of gasoline. And this is incredible. She remembered seeing her dad use gasoline to treat a wound on their dog once. So she poured the gasoline on her arm. The pain was excruciating, but it worked. It forced the maggots out. She crawled into the hut to wait, and that evening, 3 men showed up.
And this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. When these lumbermen saw this pale, ghostly-looking girl stumbling out of the jungle, they were terrified. They thought she was a local mythological spirit called the Yakumama, the mother of the water. It was only when she spoke to them in Spanish and explained she was from the Lanza crash that they realized who and what they were looking at.
So she's rescued. The ordeal is over. But that was really just the beginning of a different kind of journey. The story of the girl who fell from the sky became a legend, but for Julianne, it was a profound trauma that she had to learn to live with. And this, right here, might be the most powerful part of the whole story. Investigators eventually figured out that at least 14 other people had also survived the initial crash, but they all stayed where they landed, waiting for a rescue that never found them. Julianne survived because she didn't wait. She used her knowledge, she used her willpower, and she rescued herself. For years, she was really haunted by this, the survivor's guilt, the constant question of why me, and she found her answer, not by running away from the jungle, but by going back to it. She followed in her parents' footsteps, became a renowned zoologist, and dedicated her life to conserving the very same Amazon rainforest that had almost killed her, but also, in the end, saved her life. So in the end, her survival wasn't a miracle in the way you might think. It wasn't just random luck. It was this incredible combination of knowledge that was passed down to her and an absolutely unbreakable will to live. And it really makes you wonder, right? It leaves you the pretty heavy question. If you were faced with the impossible, what hidden knowledge, what inner strength would you find inside yourself?